When the Liberals defeated the Conservative Party last October to form a new government, I was pretty disappointed, like many of you probably were too. But in democracy, we accept defeat and move on as the will of the people has been heard. I was ready to accept the challenge of holding Justin Trudeau and his many rookie cabinet members to account. I expected there would be controversies, scandals, and heated debates. But never did I expect the very fabric of our democracy and the way we elect our government to come under attack, and to see how our electoral system changed. Sure, the Liberals will tell us that it was part of their platform, but I don't think the average voter truly knew the Liberals had planned 2015 as the last election under our first past the post system. That is why I was somewhat excited to attend a public town hall with the Minister for Democratic Institutions, Mariam Monsef, on Friday night. But as it turns out, I was the only journalist excited or concerned enough to actually show up. Yes, despite a $250 million raise from the taxpayer, nobody from CBC Vancouver bothered to show up, despite this being the minister's one and only appearance here in Vancouver. I guess scheduling something this important on a Friday night right next door to BC Place while the BC Lions are playing a home game meant not only was it inconvenient for citizens to attend, but inconvenient for the government broadcaster too. What a joke. I noted too that along with the Lower Mainland only having one of these town halls with the minister, that all of Alberta only had one too. It was the following night in Edmonton. Yeah, too bad for you if you live in Canada's most conservative city, Calgary, and wanted your chance to be heard. I'm sure the Liberal Party thought you would have nothing better to do on a late summer Saturday night than drive all the way up to Edmonton if you wanted to be heard. While Liberal and NDP MPs are holding their own town hall sessions on this issue across the country in their own ridings, this tour is the only chance Canadians will have to see the minister in charge, and they are done in cooperation with the public service. So to break it down for you, we had one open house in Vancouver, metro area, 2.5 million people, one for the entire province of Alberta, 4.2 million people, and yet 5, count them, 5 for the Maritimes, which have a combined population of 2.3 million, which is less than the Vancouver metro area, as I mentioned before. But it makes sense once we remember how Atlantic Canada voted last election. Remember? And we know the Liberal Party has always been contemptuous of Western Canada. Being the only journalist present gave me an opportunity to chat with the minister one-on-one after the event. I started by asking her what she's going to do with all the ideas and commentary from these sessions.
Well, conversations with people like the people of Vancouver here tonight, I've personally have been taking notes mentally as well as physically. Each participant is part of a group discussion through a participatory process. That feedback is provided to us. We compile that qualitative data, and at the end of this process, all have a report, much like the Special All-Party Committee will. And that information, as well as the information we're hearing from Canadians online and through MP town halls, is going to help inform our legislation.
Well, you heard the minister say she does not believe that a referendum is the best way of doing this process. And she was actually asked during the event if there was anything at all that could convince her that a referendum was the best way. Take a look.
I'm going to stick on the referendum part because I just think that's totally appropriate. It's not your system. It was nice for you to say that. Of course, as a Canadian, it is your system, but as minister, it's not. It's ours. What would it take to convince you? You say there's 36 million Canadians, there could be divisions, there needs to be healing, but there's a committee. Who cares? That's a few people out of our country, elected or not, and acting under the rules of parliamentary protocol. What would it take to convince you? Do you need a poll of Canadians? Do you need 10 polls? What is it going to take?
So the difference in opinion here, so I appreciate your feedback, and you may not care about what that committee has to say, but I do. These folks have put a lot on the line. They're working really hard. They're doing a really good job at maintaining a civil tenor of collaborating and cooperating. And I'm confident that the report they present to us come December 1st will be well informed and well researched, and conversations like this. I have a riding in Peterborough-Kawartha that I'm homesick for almost every day, but I'm doing this because it's really important to hear from people who don't share the same ideals as me. And it's also important to hear what other ideas are out there. So I care about what that committee has to say. That's going to have a lot to do with the legislation that we put forward and that next step of how do we gauge that broad support. And I'm also listening to people like you. And I'm also listening to people online. And I'm also talking to people in restaurants and in airports and in taxis. And I'm trying to hear from as many Canadians as possible before I make a final conclusion. And I hope that that's okay.
You can see the gentleman who asked that question at the end there say, "You did not answer my question." No, she didn't, and that's disappointing because there is polling out there right now that shows there is overwhelming support amongst the Canadian public for a referendum on this topic. An Ipsos poll in May found that 73% of Canadians feel electoral reform should not proceed without a referendum. And a Forum poll in July found that 65% of Canadians see a need for a referendum on electoral reform. So why doesn't that square with Monsev? Well, I think we all know the Liberals want to see a change in the voting system that directly benefits their party. They want a ranked ballot system where they believe everybody has them as their second choice. But remember her telling me in the interview that as long as an overwhelming majority of Canadians want to keep first past the post, then she would? Well, what about an overwhelming majority of Canadians who want a referendum? Another observation I made was that there was a large presence of LeadNow activists at the town hall, all wearing purple LeadNow shirts. I noted that when the groups broke up, they strategically spread out and put one of their members in 10 of the 18 groups. Often, it was the LeadNow reps I saw leading the discussions and acting as the group's scribe. I asked Minister Monsev if she took note of the large representation of LeadNow.
Well, for Canadians, there are many priorities: the economy, the environment, their democratic institutions, their children and their grandchildren's future. Ultimately, during elections, as you can appreciate, people expect different parties and different leaders who present them with a plan to, if they get elected, to carry out that plan and to deliver on those promises. And this was one of the promises that we weren't the only ones to make. The majority of Canadians voted for parties who were committed to bringing about electoral reform. So, you brought up the referendum question. I've been really clear about what my personal position on it. I don't believe that it's the best way to go about determining whether or not any reform has that broad support of Canadians, but I also understand that this isn't about what my personal views are. Why we're out here, why we're traveling the country, why there is a special committee devoted to this is because this is Canadians' electoral system, and ultimately whatever outcome we come up with has to have their broad support, and so we've shared the responsibility of answering that question with the committee. So come December 1st, they're going to provide us with a report. One of the recommendations they're going to make is just that, is how do we determine whether or not this reform has that buy-in from the people of this country, and I'm really looking forward to that report.
So just to clarify things, is a referendum on the table come the committee report, and is first past the post completely dead in this country, federally?
Look, we made a promise that 2019 we'd be voting a different way federally for MPs in this country, and we're committed to delivering that promise because Canadians asked us to. The Prime Minister traveled the country, whether it was at doorsteps or whether it was experts and academics. People said we need a different way. So at the end of this process, if we hear from Canadians that they want a specific system, we're committed to delivering on that system.
Even if that system is remaining the same system, first past the post?
If the overwhelming majority says, let's keep it as is, this is about them. This isn't about us. And so with the understanding that we heard from Canadians loud and clear that they want change, at the end of this, we're going to deliver on what they want us to do.
You heard her say a lot, but tell us very little. Despite being a first-term MP and cabinet minister, she's become pretty good at political speak. But you can tell the Liberal Party is using these consultations and the notes they compile and all the handouts people submit, gathering it all together to say, here, look, social license. We consulted the people of this country and here's what they had to say. The media and the pundit class will of course eat this up and say, look how consultative they're being. And they will of course compare that to the previous government, which did not do things this way, and automatically declare the Liberals' method as more democratic and consultative, which it is not. But speaking of those two words, democratic and consultative, what could be more democratic and consultative of Canadians than a referendum? Well, I asked her why the government won't have a referendum and why they weren't more clear that they were ditching first past the post. And here's what she had to say.
So I sat with the different groups for different questions, and what I noted was that, yes, there were advocates who were there on behalf of a specific system like LeadNow, but there were also people who wanted to maintain first past the post, and they were represented in the same numbers. What I take away mostly from tonight's conversation in Vancouver is the significant number of young people who were here, and they were informed and they were passionate, and they went out of their way to let the people in the room know that young people do care about politics and they want to be engaged, and that's probably the most inspiring aspect of tonight for me.
LeadNow makes no qualms about the fact they wish to see proportional representation. It's right there on the homepage of their website. But as you may know, LeadNow is another foreign-funded activist group that has a long history of opposing everything. From opposing the massive investment in LNG from Petronas to the low-carbon energy from the Site C Dam. And my favorite, they are openly opposed to the safe, low-impact salmon farming that goes on in our province. Our Holly Nicholas exposed how LeadNow uses Tide's money to unite the split left vote in certain ridings to beat the Conservative candidates in our last election. LeadNow showed up with a purpose on Friday: to infiltrate and dictate the discussion in the groups they were in. You can see from the pictures I took that this was a coordinated plan to ensure that they were in control of the message that night. While they were only able to infiltrate 10 out of the 18 groups, that is more than half the people that were attending. And I think it's unfair when one activist groups who have a particular position that they already believe is the solution to dictate the discussion. But would we really expect anything less from a Tides-funded group like LeadNow? For the Rebel.media, I'm Christopher Wilson.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.